Today we are very pleased to welcome back a great friend of the New England Council. And let me just say that many of you know that we share an awful lot in common. That the mayor and I were born and raised in Dorchester, Columbia, Savin Hill area. We both attended grammar school at St. Margaret's Grammar School. He is a son of immigrants, mother and father from Rustmuck and outside of Galway. My mother and father from Tuppacurry and Ballymote, Sligo. So we're first generation, very involved in the Civic Association in Dorchester. We both ran for state representative, and we were very fortunate. And the mayor and I ran for mayor of the city. He was very successful. And moving right along, because I don't want to get into more comparisons, but needless to say, he has done an outstanding job as a state representative for over 16 years. And we knew that when he was running for mayor of this great city that he would be doing great things. And I think the proof is in the pudding that the recent elections, with some 67% of the vote citywide, just about every neighborhood, he has really demonstrated his commitment, his vision. And if somebody who travels as much as we do here at the New England Council, and we go to different cities, to be able to stand here and say the city of Boston is, in the last 4 years, some 60,000 jobs, 30,000 people have moved into the city. The population is 640, 650,000. You'd have to go back to the 1950s to have a population figure like that. And it just says this city is exciting, it's vibrant, it's a city that people want to work in, it's a city that people want to live in. He has done so much in housing. He's put his team together and said that we need to create more units, more affordable units, and he is doing that. I think he's already done some 19,000 of them, and 7,500 are for low income. I mean, he is building constantly because he wants to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to live in the city. But probably what is really unique about this mayor is that he wants to make sure that Boston is a city that welcomes and supports any person who wishes to work here and to contribute to this great community. The mayor has worked with employers and advocated for state legislation to close the gender gap, to ensure that Boston's women are valued for their talents and their contributions. The mayor has revitalized the immigration support system here with the Office for Immigrant Advancement and created an immigrant defense fund to assist individuals facing deportation. Again, a son of immigrants and never forgot what it was like. And then finally, the mayor has stood up time and time again for LGBTQ community to ensure that their rights are protected and that Boston is a place where they feel safe and welcome. I say this message of Boston as a welcoming city because this is who he is. He wants to make sure that everyone has a chance to succeed and to have an opportunity here in this great city. I could go on and on about the tremendous leader he is for our city, but I know that you're all eager to hear from him. Please join me in welcoming my neighbor, my friend, our mayor, Marty Walsh.
Thank you, Jim, and I want to thank you for that introduction. I was going to just add, he didn't do himself, but he went to St. Margaret's long before I did. But I want to thank Jim. I want to thank the New England Council. I want to thank all of everyone here. I want to thank Bank of America. Alicia, thank you, and Bank of America for hosting us this morning. You know, it's a tough morning the day after the Super Bowl. We're not used to this feeling. Usually, you know, we know what to do today. We're not really sure what to do today, but and for me anyway, it's as the morning goes on, it's getting worse. Because last night I thought to myself, you know, it's not bad. We let somebody else win the Super Bowl. Philadelphia, good luck to them. They had a great team, and you know, couldn't fall asleep. And then woke up this morning and started thinking about, okay, why did Butler really not play, and why couldn't they have made a stop on this, and so let's not go there. But in all seriousness, I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank Jim's advocacy for the region, obviously for the Commonwealth, for the New England Council, all the New England states. Thank you for everything you do, and the board. You know, it's important. This is at this time, I think, more than any other time, the council is probably more important right now than it's ever been because of the atmosphere that's going on in Washington, and when you have an opportunity to hear the lineup of speakers from New England that come to the council, and the council puts in front of you every time there's a meeting. That's important. It's important for us to understand that, important for the Congress and our delegation of New England to hear what we're doing here in Boston and New England, because we have to stick together. So I want to thank you, Jim, for that, for the success of our regional economy. We've had some success in Boston, obviously. Over the last 4 years, we've added 80,000 new jobs to the city of Boston. In that time, we're looking at the people that work in the city of Boston. That brings a total of work in our city to 800,000 people. Now, our population is 676,000 people. So we're getting close to that 2 million mark, to either people living in the city of Boston or working in the city of Boston. That's something that's important. Our average unemployment rate in 2017 was 3.5%, compared to 6.1% in 2013. So we're seeing that number come down. In the communities of color, which we talk about a lot, we're seeing the number, it's about 6% in the communities of color. So we have a 3.5 in Boston overall, and in our areas of Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, it's roughly 6%. So it shows that we still have a lot of work to do in those communities in our city. We've used the benefit in the growth of this, what we're seeing in our city, to help thousands of low-income workers into job training and career placement. So as we think about, as we set out what we're doing in the city, we're taking some of the benefits of the development that we're having in the city, and we're putting it back into workforce development. And Trin Nguyen is from our workforce development shop. I don't know if she's here this morning, but we're working to make sure we continue to help and train workers so they can take advantage of the economy of the future. In real estate development, over the past 4 years, nearly $20 billion of development has entered the pipeline in our city in the last 4 years. Much of this work is moving fast, so not only are we seeing approvals happening, but we're seeing approvals happening, and we're also seeing the construction of these projects start. In 2017 alone, we saw a new $3.2 billion in residential development, $2.2 billion in commercial development in the city of Boston. Both of those are a record for 1 year. We can also see jobs growing along with the buildings. We see, as the buildings are coming into play, we're seeing jobs happen. We're seeing companies want to be here in the city of Boston and want to move everything to the city. Cybersecurity leader Rapid7 announced a plan to expand in Boston. It's moving its headquarters to our city, from Sumner Street to North Station. Software firm PTC and pharmaceutical company Alexion moving into 121 Seaport Boulevard. Aptiv is a leader in the autonomous vehicle space. It's been testing in the Seaport, is now looking to create a tech sector in Boston with over 300 employees. So you think about something that started as a pilot program down the waterfront that some people weren't really sure if we should do, is turning into opportunities in our city. Mass Innovation Labs is a science incubator. It will be another anchor tenant in the Innovation Square. We broke ground in December down at the South Boston waterfront. It will also lease space at Boston Landing in Brighton. The auto technology firm Bose is now opening a new operation in Boston Landing. Healthcare tech leader Philips is moving to their North American headquarters and 2,000 jobs to Cambridge Crossing, which touches Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville. So as we think about growth here, we also have to make sure that we think about regional growth, because it can't just be one city. It needs to be all of us collectively working together to move our economy forward. Small businesses are thriving as well. We have at least 40,000 small businesses in the city of Boston with about $15 billion of annual revenue. In the past few months, that included Salon Monet, a hair salon in Newbury Street opened by an African-American entrepreneur. The Dorchester Brewing Company, with light manufacturing jobs on Mass Ave. Ray Creole Coffee, that expanded from West Roxbury to Rosendale to the lobby of City Hall. We've had a couple in Roxbury open up a marketplace in the Dudley Square for 100 artisan and entrepreneurs. In Sweet Tea's Bakery in Dorchester, the founder, Teresa Maynard, got her start with the help of We Boston, our program for women entrepreneurs. And many of the women in this room, I want to thank you for your work on our Women's Council. I want to thank you for pushing us in our city to make sure we continue to be a city that's equal and that we finally get to pay equity in what we need to do in our city. As for the future, none of us can predict what's going to happen, but we can be cautiously optimistic because we have strong fundamentals. We have world-class hospitals and universities. Many of you in this room are part of that network. A global recognized talent pipeline, innovation, inclusion, inclusive culture, and great quality of life. The real estate investment from JLL recently ranked Boston the top innovator in the world, with the most global influence relative to our size. But ultimately, any national downturn will impact us. So we have a responsibility to act wisely as we move forward here. As a city, that means protecting our AAA bond rating, advancing our data-driven reforms, and continuing to improve our performance. It also means continuing to promote a balanced economy with good jobs in the growth industries. From online retail to neighborhood small businesses, from life sciences and medicine to high tech. It means continuing to do all we can to make sure the economy can support a strong and growing middle class. As a lot of people know, and you hear a lot of stories about it, housing is a big part of that. When I came into office, Boston was faced with a historic housing shortage. Our shortage has driven up the costs of many workers and for many workers and small businesses in our city. It was no one's fault. It just happened that people said we need to start going to Boston. And with the production of housing wasn't keeping up with the amount of people that wanted to come into our city. So in 2014, we launched a plan to address, or try to address, the shortage. We set a target of creating 53,000 units of new housing by the year 2030. We are ahead of that pace to meet that goal, with 25,000 units already either started or completed. That's helped stabilize rents. But we're still seeing a problem because the demand to be in Boston is still greater. 2017 was a record-breaking year for us. We permitted over 53,000 units of housing, included 1,000 of those restricted to low-income residents. And the pipeline is full of projects. So we're expecting another strong year. So we're working now to make sure, how do we continue to increase the production even more? We'll have revenues from the Community Preservation Act to do even more on the affordable housing side. We welcome the housing bond bill that's been passed by the House of Representatives. I want to thank Representative Collins, and I want to thank the Speaker for passing, and Kevin Honan, the Chairman of Housing, for passing a housing bond bill, which is important because a lot of what's in the bond bill looks regionally, and we're going to take a regional approach. We're going to advance our proposal to regulate short-term rentals in the city of Boston so that home sharing remains an option. We're not looking to eliminate Airbnb in the city of Boston. What we're looking to do is make sure that these units that were built for residential housing goes back to residential housing, and Airbnb, the idea of Airbnb, that people want to rent a room in their home, can still do that. We're not looking at that. We're looking at people converting entire buildings over to Airbnb, which is not the intention. We also want to make sure that all of the things that we do, we don't undermine housing access for working people. So it's clear that we need help from our neighbors, as I mentioned a second ago. This is a regional housing shortage, just like it's a regional labor market and it's a regional economy. So last year we had a conversation with neighboring cities and towns to launch a regional housing plan. Our team are working hard on that, and this spring we're going to announce the regional goals together so we can talk about who and what we're going to try and do in the different areas around the city. We're going to take this opportunity to upgrade our city's targets as well. So we're redoubling our efforts, looking at our own housing plan to see how we can do better. I want to just take a second to give a shout out to the college universities here, because we asked all the college universities to think about building on-campus housing or being creative. And many of them have come back with a plan with us. Some have built it, some are building it now, some are under construction, and some are talking about it. So I want to, again, thank the college universities for your help with our housing plan as well, because it's really important that we do that. Finally, in the housing section, I want to just say thank you for your support in this room on the homeless issue. Homelessness on our streets is a regional issue. Half of our shelter guests on any given night are coming from outside the city. Our new system for ending chronic homelessness is being proved successful. We've gotten more than 1,300 people into homes supports since 2014. What does that mean? That means we have 1,300 people that were homeless on the streets of Boston the day that I got sworn in as mayor of the city of Boston at Boston College in January of 2014. And last night, after the Super Bowl, they had a chance to put their head on their pillow in their apartment. That's the work that we're doing in the city of Boston with the help of a lot of people. We've ended chronic veterans homelessness in the city of Boston, and we're looking to end all chronic homelessness by the end of the year. Last week, I went out with many of the people, some people in this room, on a homeless census count. I was excited for a couple reasons. One is I didn't see as many people in my area as I did last year and the year before. And two, I saw 4 people that I came across that were living in a home, in an apartment, that were talking about the excitement. And we realized afterwards when I went home, I thought about it, you know, it was great to meet those 4 people, but you think about they return back to the location where they lived for a long time on the streets. So we still have more work to do as far as wraparound services. I want to thank Bank of America. January 1st of this year, I launched a Boston's Way Home Fund. Bank of America was the first organization to step up and make a $250,000 donation to kick us off on raising $10 million to build 200 units of housing in the city of Boston for chronically homeless people. I'm asking all of you today, if you could go back home, go back to your offices and talk to your bosses about making a donation. The plan for this is 4 years raising $10 million. We're Boston, Massachusetts. It should not take $10 million, 4 years to raise $10 million. We should be able to raise it in a year, in a few months. So I'm asking anyone here today, as your company's thinking about, as you talk about what donations you want to do, think about a Boston's Way Home Fund. It's an opportunity to help us continue to house chronic homeless people. One other big long-term issue is education. The budget process for the Boston Public Schools launches next week. We're proposing another historic investment in our schools. We have to continue to make investments. It's important for us to have a long-term financial plan. We're working towards fixing the financial situation in the school department, but it's also important for us that we look at areas like transportation, close the structural deficit, allow more resources back into the classroom, something that needs to happen. One of our biggest fiscal challenges that we can't wait to solve is our declining and underfunded in state aid. We have issues there. While our costs have gone down and grown, while our costs have grown, our Chapter 70 is flat. The formula doesn't recognize the needs we serve: English language learners, low-income students, high-quality pre-kindergarten, a citywide transportation system, and we are fully funding, the city of Boston is fully funding charter schools. What does that mean? That means that in the budget last year, we had to put $27 million into fund a line item that is by statute supposed to be fully funded by the state. That brings our total to $100 million over the last 4 years that the city of Boston has had to pick up. We're not alone in this fight. I was disappointed to see in House 1 that came out this week that we had no changes in Chapter 70 and no changes in the charter school reimbursement line item. Now, I don't like to talk publicly about my differences with the state, but this is too important because we're in a crisis here in the city. We're at a tipping point where we need to do something with our schools. I know that the budget is going to the House of Representatives, the next one up. We're going to be working with the Speaker, going to be working with Representative Collins and Chairwoman Alice Peisch and the Chair of Education in the House of Representatives. So hopefully we can make them things happen. Because this is important for us, for the future of our city. As I think about the growth of our city, we think about college universities, and we think about all of the great talent we have here in the city of Boston. That talent needs to be produced. we need to make sure that in our public school system that we get this right. We can't go another generation of not turning our district around. If you look at what's happened in the last 4 years, we've had some wins. We have the highest graduation rate in the history of Boston, 76%. We can celebrate on one side. On the other side, we have 24% of our kids dropping out of school. That's not a celebration. We have more level 1 and level 2 schools than any other period in the history of our city. We can celebrate about that. But we still got a third of our schools that are level 3, level 4 that are not the top. We can't celebrate about that. So it's important for us as we continue to move ahead. We are going to continue to move ahead, and we are going to continue to make the changes in our school district to make sure that we have the best urban district, not on paper, but in actuality. Because by somebody telling me you have the best urban district in the country, well, that doesn't mean much to me. When I start hearing from the presidents of the colleges saying you're really sending some talented people our way, that's when I know that we are hitting our stride. So I want to just pass that along. Partnerships are important. It's important for us that we have partners. Jim represents the needs of what we need in the city of Boston. But Washington is a tough place to do business. It's simply the lack of leadership. It's having a real impact on our communities. It's a broken immigration system. It's shifting the goalposts in enforcement. It's creating fear in our homes, disruption in our workplace, and we're not getting things done down in Washington. Now, I didn't come here to beat Washington up, and I'm not going to do that. But I spent 16 years in the legislature. As I look around, I served with John Keenan. I served with John Quinn. I served with Jackie Hart. I served with Nick Collins. You can't tell me that they can't agree on anything. There's an infrastructure bill that's supposed to be happening. We've been hearing about this infrastructure bill, the hugest, biggest infrastructure bill since 2014. All we've heard about is Russia and immigration. And neither one of them there's a pathway to a fix. So again, I urge people in this room to get active. To get active, let your voices be heard. Don't sit on the sideline. I know when there's a change in government or a change in leader, whether it's a State House or Capitol Hill, there's always a time where you don't want to disrupt the apple cart. You know what we're getting now in Washington, D.C. We have a couple things in front of us. I am calling for comprehensive immigration reform that recognizes the role that immigrants play in our community and our economy. Everyone in this room knows that. Everyone in this room knows how important that is. Our message to Congress and the White House is simple. Do what you were elected to do. Simply do your job. Just do your job. We could have a different Congress next year and a different White House in 3 years, but we can't afford to wait. There's too much at stake here in Massachusetts, in Boston, in this country. We have to work even harder at the state, local, and regional levels. 2 weeks ago at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, what I saw there and what I was part of there was mayors moving policy forward, focused on local issues and understanding the national need. We're a bipartisan group of mayors. We're Democrats and Republicans. And not once did it come up in the conversation about difference of views on any issue. We talk about how we move our cities forward. Boston's going to continue to play a leadership role in the work down in Washington through the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We received an award for our childhood nutrition anti-obesity campaign. We were recognized by Bloomberg as the national leader in data innovation. I'm kind of pissed about that one. We came in second to LA, and I'm not sure why that happened, but I'm gonna go back at that. By my colleagues, the mayors around the country, I was asked to be chairman of the Housing Committee, working on issues of housing, and continue to be the vice chair of the Substance Abuse and Recovery Task Force. This June, Boston's going to be a leader. We're bringing the United States Conference of Mayors here to our city. We're going to have over about 1,000 mayors from all over the country right here in Boston. We're going to bring them to Fenway Park. We're going to bring them to JFK. We're going to let them see our neighborhoods. We're going to be talking about issues from climate change to opioid addiction to housing to jobs and education training. Hopefully, we'll probably be talking about immigration too, because then it doesn't seem like they're going to get anything done in the next week or so. So it's going to be important for us as we move forward here to talk about the future of America. As I wind down here, First of all, I'd like to ask you to get involved in the U.S. Conference of Mayors if you want to. I don't know if Pat's here, Pat Mascartola, but please go to our talk to the Greater Boston Visitors and Convention Bureau, or you can grab Joyce Lenahan, who's Chief of Policy here. Before I finish, I just want to thank, and I'm going to take questions. I want to thank the business community in Boston. This has been an incredible partnership, I think, between our administration and the city of Boston. So my administration, the business community, I want to thank you for that. I see a few Red Sox fans here. Claire Durant's here. I want to thank you, Claire. And David's here. I don't know if Sam Kennedy's here. Last week, the Red Sox took Alex Cora, and the Red Sox went down to Puerto Rico with myself and some volunteers, and they brought down a $200,000 check to Alex Cora's hometown of Caguas. They brought 50,000 tons of food. They brought baseball gloves. They brought backpacks for the kids. And I want to thank the Boston Red Sox for what you did last week and recognizing that. I'd also like to thank some of my team is here today. We have John Barros, Chief of Economic Development is here. Thank you, John. Joyce Lenahan, Chief of Policy. Pat Brophy, Chief of Operations. Dave Sweeney, Chief of Staff. We have Lauren Jones here as well, who works in our Economic Development Office. So they're going to be here for any questions you might have, if anything specific. And with that, I just thank you, Jim Brett, for the opportunity to come here and say a few words. Again, we're not used to having a Monday like this. Usually it's, we're up, but it's all right. Hey, what can you do? Any questions?
We have a couple of minutes for questions. Maybe I just ask the first question. You're a leader in the substance abuse. Give us an update on the opiate problem here in the city and the progress you're making. Yeah,
addiction is tough. I was down in the conference, and we had a panel, and there was a gentleman on the panel, Sam Fuentes. He's a reporter, I think, for the LA Times. He wrote a book called Dreamland, and I don't know if anyone's read it yet, but I'm reading it now, and it's an incredible book. It talks about the beginning of black tar heroin and where it came from in Mexico. It talks about the beginning of opioids around the 1850s, and when they really started to kind of take wind, and how the switch went from doctors went from being positive, from negative to opioids to positive for opioids. And then it talks about middle-class America and addiction. The issue is still front and center. We're still doing a lot of work. We have the Office of Recovery Services in the city. In the governor's budget, he did put some money for addiction in there. Representative Collins has been a champion on the addiction stuff in the House of Representatives, so we're going to be working with him as we move forward here. But the governor made a comment the other day that the numbers of, according to the studies, the numbers of overdose deaths have gone down. I don't necessarily quite agree with that. No, I'm not questioning the governor. What I'm saying is that I think that the problem is as big today as it was yesterday. And I think that, the way to combat it is by making sure the companies that are here today, if you haven't taken it seriously, if you haven't gone back and looked at your EAP programs, you're kidding yourself. You have employees that are working for you this morning that are going into work that are either addicted to drugs or alcohol. You might not see it because they hide it well. And if you have a strong EAP program, you give them the opportunity to be successful. This fight is not a state fight. This is not about how much money the city can put in, the state can put in, the federal government put in. This is a universal fight for all of us. It's important for us to tackle this at all different levels. So the first thing I'd like to ask the businesses, go back and look and see what you have there, number one. But number two, we're going to continue to operate in the city of Boston. Anything we can do to help you. We created the Office of Recovery Services. We opened up the PATH program, which we're working on getting people into treatment. We opened up, obviously, we had to rebuild a new homeless facility. We have a drop-in center behind there. We're working on getting people into treatment. We're doing everything we can to try and get people into treatment. The governor filed a bill, somewhat controversial, a 72-hour bill. It allows the police department to keep somebody 72 hours in a hospital. It's a lot of people are back and forth on it. All I can say is this: while the police department, while they arrest you, if they arrest you or they PC you, and they have you locked in for 72 hours, within that 72 hours, you might have a moment of clarity where you might be willing to go into treatment. So I think any tool that we have is an important tool. I know that there's going to be a lot of discussions about civil liberties and all different types of things, and I believe in civil liberties, obviously, but I also believe in saving people's lives, and that might be an opportunity for us to save lives.
Question for our mayor?
Yeah.
Try not to
Right in the back,
at once. Who?
The Globe Spotlight series on race in Boston showed both anecdotally and statistically that there has not been a tremendous lurch forward over several decades in terms of clout in the decision-making process. How did you react to, and that's both public and private sector, and I wonder how you reacted to that series and what response is appropriate, both in public and private sectors?
Yeah, I think, 2014, one of the first things that we did as an administration is began the conversation around race and racism. We applied for a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation. We put an application in for resilient cities. We became one of the 100 resilient cities. Our application was based on race and racism. So I think that the administration, we sent a letter very early on, and we identified that we have an issue with race in Boston and racism in Boston in 2014. We've begun putting together some conversations around the city of Boston around racial dialogue. We've already had thousands of these. That was missing from the story, and I think that that's an important function that should have been in the story. The story, first of all, I think it was a well-done story in some aspects. I think that the one piece I think that was missing was the framing of the conversation around race, because Boston's changed as a city. So I don't think everyone quite understands exactly what does it mean about busing in Boston. They weren't here for it. Their families weren't here for it. They didn't go to school here. Oh, they went to college here. They might have read Common Ground. They might not have read Common Ground. If they did, they have a better understanding of what busing was. So I think that the framing needed to happen. But I think we can't ignore the fact that we have an issue of race. I think some gains have been made in the political world, and I think some gains haven't been made in the political world. I think some gains have been made in the business world, and not enough gains have been made in the business world. And I think it's important for us as a city. I think we are responsible for, we are able to help with the problem to a degree, but it has to be a complete culture change in the business community. It can't be, City of Boston, what are you doing for economic development to get people of color part of a project? It has to be more of a relationship between the business community leaders saying, this is what we need to do to advance moving our business community forward. I think we're seeing it. We're not seeing it at quick enough, fast enough pace. I think in the political world, again, I'd love to sit back and talk about the gains. In that article, there was one thing though. The article is mostly framed on Boston. There was a lot of back and forth with Massachusetts. And when we talked about election gains in the city, in the legislature, the conversation was about Boston, and then when you talked about election gains when it came to the legislature, you talked about Massachusetts numbers. So the numbers of Massachusetts, it looked like, I think it was 160 state rep, 200 members of the legislature. I want to say 27 of them were people of color. Well, if you break Boston down, 50% of the legislators in Boston are people of color. And so I think it's important that we start to grow on some of that stuff. Bottom line, I thought the series was a wake-up call for some folks. And I think it's important that now, what's the next step? Even the Globe admitted in their own story that even their own workforce didn't reflect the community. I think it's important for us to all collectively continue to. It's not just about reflecting the community, but it's about making it the way it should be in our city. I shouldn't be counting how many black people I have in the city of Boston, and I need to hire 3 more black people to get to 50%. That's not how we should be governing. Boston should be equal. It should be an equal path. When somebody comes in for an interview in my office, whether they're black, white, Latino, or Asian, there shouldn't be a choice, I have to hire this person because of this color. It's important for us as a culture. It's 2018. We should have been way beyond this by now. And I think that hopefully over the next 10 years, Boston can make a big difference, and the state can make a big difference, and the country, quite honestly. Paul.
Marie St. Fleur.
Yeah. Paul?
Paul from MIT.
And my friend Marie St. Fleur. I worked with Marie St. Fleur on the issues as well in the House of Representatives. Hey, Paul.
Paul is from MIT, so expect the intellectual question here.
I'll let Jim Brett answer this one.
I leave all those to you, Jim. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for being with us this morning. I wanted to ask you about your comments regarding the National Conference of Mayors and the 2 points you raised about immigration and the infrastructure bill, which we don't have any details on. Is there anything that you or we might do to help those mayors who I'm sure agree with you, but are from other parts of the country where the president receives a lot more support? It seems to me that we ought to find ways to help them and to help make a point to their representatives that these are issues that help all urban areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Actually, most of the mayors around the country that are Republican per se, the mayor of Mesa, Arizona is a Republican, been very outspoken against the president on his health care, on the comprehensive health care bill that he tried to change, and immigration, because immigration is so important to his economy. Mayor Tate of Anaheim, California, a Republican as well, is not afraid to speak up. I think that, honestly, I think that some of the people in this room have business opportunities to get back to the White House. I think you need to put pressure on the White House. I think you need to put pressure on some congressmen and some congresswomen around the country. You know, the whole conversation around DACA and temporary protective status, those are just two issues of a larger problem. So if you take care of the TPS and the DACA, you're talking about 2.5 million people. We still have in this country, we'll still have 9.5 million people that are undocumented. And what do you do with the 9.5 million people that are here undocumented? So I think, and you can't put it pertain to building a wall. That's a lot of nonsense. First of all, the drug trade doesn't care. You can build all the walls you want around the border, and you can put them 10,000 feet up into the air. They go into, they dig tunnels. Somebody should inform the president that. And then also, it's important for us as we think about this moving forward, some of our own delegation in New England to really think about how do we move forward. Because DACA and TPS are only two pieces of a larger puzzle when it comes to immigration. We're going to have far bigger issues. I don't disagree the fact that we need immigration reform, by the way. I think that we shouldn't just have an open border. Anyone that wants to walk into the United States of America, we can't do that. You just can't do that. We've never done that as a country. And I don't think we should begin doing that right now. But what I think we have to do is we have to come up with a good, the Congress has to come up with a good piece of legislation that deals with the people that are in this country, and then think about how do we move forward as a society. Two of the largest increases of immigrants coming into the country, undocumented immigrants into this country, happened under Ronald Reagan and George Bush. A lot of reasons why that happened is, and they're both Republicans, a lot of reasons why that happens because we needed the workforce. Again, we need to get this under control to some degree. As far as infrastructure, the president had a meeting with some mayors down in D.C. He came in and talked about the infrastructure bill is going to be $1.6 trillion. Then one of his staff came in after that, and he said that the infrastructure bill is going to be $1 trillion. And then a little later, somebody came in and said it's going to be $500 billion with a $500 billion match from the cities and towns. You got to be clear on what the bill is. It went from 1.6 to 500 with a 500 match. There's a big difference in having something like that. I think that the country, certainly under the Obama administration and actually under Bush, we needed this infrastructure bill. This isn't a Trump inherited this, so I think there's an opportunity to do something special.
One final question, the mayor. There's not.
Do you have any update on the Amazon situation?
No. The question is update on Amazon. Not yet. We're still working with them to find out exactly what does it mean to be in the next rounds. Obviously, a couple things that just real quickly on Amazon. One thing that I think that's important is the last 4 years we've gone through a master planning process in Boston. We've looked at everything from transportation to housing to the schools to the climate to everything we possibly can look at. And I think that Amazon, the exercise that we're about to go through, will be an opportunity for us in Boston to really think about what the future of Boston looks like up front and personal, meaning that 50,000 new jobs over a 10-year period. By the way, we added 80,000 in the last 4 years. So Amazon would be great to have in the city, but it's an opportunity for us to really think about what do we need in our city. And I think the couple things that as we move forward. Number one, we need to continue to build talent in our city. I've been talking to a few companies that are saying if Amazon comes here, they're going to take the people from our company. We have to make sure there's additional people here in this city, in this region, so Amazon isn't poaching from companies that are successful in our city. Second piece is housing. We have a plan to build housing. Whether or not Amazon comes to Boston, we've created 25,000, almost 25,000 units of new housing in 4 years, the last 4 years. We're going to continue to push that forward. So whether or not Amazon comes, we're going to continue a plan there. And lastly, I think that's key to economic success in our region is infrastructure. We have to work with the state, which we do very closely with the state, with the governor. I work very closely with the governor, as everyone knows, on the MBTA and the commuter rail. We need to make sure that that system is in place because that is the future of our city. That is the future of the growth in our city. That is the future of expansion in our city. That is the future of keeping us connected. So we need to make sure that we get our rapid transit system and our train system and our bus system on a better pace. You see what's happening at Logan Airport. Logan Airport has 56 direct flights. They're expanding the terminal over there. Tom Glenn's doing an incredible job moving the airport along. When you have a smooth process like that, you're seeing a lot of growth as a result of that. We need to make sure that same growth happens on our public transportation system, both inside the city of Boston, but also the commuter rail down. Amazon, I think, will allow us the opportunity to really see where our shortfalls are, our shortcomings are, and so we can work collectively to strengthen those shortcomings.
I know you're on a tight schedule. We just want to thank the mayor for always being available to New England Council. Obviously, he could spend all day talking about the great things that he's doing, but also what needs to be done to make this city even greater, and it's the support of the business community, as he just mentioned. It's a partnership, and it's unique, and it's something that he developed from day one, and it has given dividends to the city, and we just want to thank him for all the great work that he's doing. It's not an easy job. It's 24/7, and unlike other elected officials, in particular down in Washington, the mayor has to make decisions, and he can't kick the can, and it's a hard job, and he does it well, and I know we're all very proud to have him as our mayor of the city of Boston. So thanks for being here. Time for photos?
Yeah, sure.